Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mind dominant herons, senors and senoritas, gats and gittens, please welcome yourself to another episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me, a world renowned, world celebrated, world famous comic book writer, about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. So let's not waste another moment of your precious time. Eyes on the road. And first up is David Jordan. I don't know if you've seen any of the old Whistler movies, but this video is a good retrospective on them, and I thought you might be interested in. And he sent me a video by Michael Price. And I remember Michael Price from working at Eclipse. Michael Price is a walking encyclopedia of all things film noir and mystery and vintage radio and pulps and movies and stuff like that. The Whistler, for those of you who don't know it, was started out as a radio show in the 1930s, I believe, and was popular, very popular. And it was one of many mystery, supernatural horror shows that had a mysterious guest, or a mysterious host, I should say. There was the Mysterious Traveler, there was Inner Sanctum, there was Lights Out, and a whole bunch of other series where some fictitious figure would introduce the story and narrate it throughout. And just recently I discovered the movies and watched a whole bunch of them. They were all short features, generally running sometimes less than an hour, more often a little over an hour. They starred Richard Dix, and Richard Dix was kind of a washed up actor at the time. He was a big star in Silence. He didn't really click with when talkies came in for some reason, but he is a huge star in silent movies. But he's really good in these, and he doesn't play the Whistler. The Whistler is still a mysterious figure that we see at the beginning and end of the movie, and sometimes in the middle. He'll come back. This shadowy guy walking down the street, whistling, and then trying to creep us out, telling these stories. Richard Dix would play a different character in each one of these movies, and they're pretty much fast play, noirish stories. One of them was based on a Cornell Woolrich story. And the thing about them, they weren't even B features. They were like C features. They were just jammed into the program somewhere. This is when movie theaters had continuous play programs. You'd go and you'd see a newsreel and cartoons and short subjects. And you have the main feature, the second feature, and then you have things like this that were just sort of squeezed into the program to keep the projectors running and the popcorn flowing. And but these, I haven't watched all of them, and I should get back to it and watch all of them. I think there's like 8, 10 of these movies. They were consistently really good, really engaging. Lots of surprising plot twists, very fast paced. Low budget, of course, but most early film noir movies were extremely low budget. And but they're good. They're good, solid entertainment. I did not regret buying the box set of DVDs that I picked up. So good call. And Michael Price, good guy. I don't know if Michael Price is still out there. I don't know if Michael's still out there, but he was an interesting and well-informed cat back in the day when I knew him in the 80s. Now up is David Zwally, and he asks, you were talking about DC and Marvel having a crossover events and how you thought Doom and Darkseid would be a great plot line. It made me think, do you think Doom would be a good foil to Batman, or do you think he's a better arch for Mr. Terrific, who's become DC's Reed Richards? Yeah, Doom and Batman all day long. I mean, these two matching wits with one another, that'd be amazing. From both their knowledge of technology. I mean, imagine like I know Tim Drake isn't part of the continuity anymore, but in my mind, that's the Batman continuity, obviously, because that's the continuity I worked in for 11 years. And I can imagine Tim Drake as a foil for Doctor Doom on the technology end. But Batman, a major chess player, once he knows what he's up against, he can figure out a strategy, and I think he would be a worthy opponent for Doom. And it would be pretty cool to see them in an actual one-on-one fight as well, not only a battle of wits. Putting Doom up against Mr. Terrific, who I barely know anything about. Now, you tell me that Mr. Terrific is DC's version of Mr. Fantastic, and it kind of makes me sad because you have a character like Mr. Terrific who's like a Golden Age leftover, and they sort of rebooted him at some point. And because his name is Mr. Terrific, they decided, well, he'll be our Mr. Fantastic. Not a whole lot of imagination was being used there. And as far as DC's Reed Richards, there's an awful lot of scientific eggheads over on the DC side. And Doctor Doom meets Mr. Terrific. Most people will go, who? Like I did. Mr. Terrific? Who's that? I know diehard DC fans of recent decades are going to go, Chuck, you should know all about him. He's a great character. He might be. I don't know him. I'm not familiar with him. It's a recent development. But you got to admit, you may be the biggest Mr. Terrific fan on the planet, but you've got to admit, Doom versus Batman is a whole lot sexier. So I'm going to go with Doom versus Batman. Gentle Savage is back with his question. Mr. Dixon, what DC or Marvel characters have you found the easiest to write? Marvel is no question a Punisher. Punisher is the best fit for me and my sensibilities of all the comic book characters I've ever written. I just really dug writing Frank Castle. I don't know what that says about me, but I had an affinity for this guy and just endless stories. I've said this many times. He's the only character I still think of stories for, and I'm not being paid to do so. So, yeah. Now, I got over to DC. It turned out Alfred was my favorite. You never know who your favorite character is to write until you're writing them. It's not always your favorite character to read. Sometimes it's there's something about that character, the writing part of your brain, just something clicks. Like when I wrote The Simpsons, and Lisa was my favorite character to write, which I would not have believed you if you had told me that before I started writing The Simpsons. But I felt I came up with all my best gags for Lisa, and she just seemed to be a good fit for me for a variety of reasons. And Alfred sort of serves the same role in the Batman universe as Lisa does in the Simpsons universe. Alfred is not a participant in the crime fighting or anything else. He's sort of an observer. He makes commentary. He often does not approve of what's going on, much like Lisa very seldom approves of what the rest of her family is doing at the time. And I just liked writing, Alfred's dry wit, his acerbic comments. I wrote him as a guy who long ago decided, there's no way I'm going to talk Bruce out of doing this crazy stuff. So I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to give him sage advice, but I know most of it will fall on deaf ears. He's just going to do what he wants to do. But I'll be there when he comes back, bullet riddled. So I'll be there to, make him tea and bring him some soup. So yeah, Alfred was my favorite character to write at DC, especially in scenes with Tim Drake. For some reason, I really like that. I like the rapport between the two of them. Okay. Next question is Kieran Brunkard. Given that Batman and Superman are paragon figures and we should not deconstruct them, can they have setbacks and bad periods where they feel like giving up being a superhero? Can they have stories of them overcoming their setbacks? Do you think that would align with their character? What's your perspective on this? Absolutely. I mean, we want to present these characters as human. They're superhuman. They're as you say, they're iconic paragons. But we don't want to show them as inhuman or unemotional. We don't want to show them as having no heart. So yeah, I mean, there can be setbacks for them on the emotional end, but of course, they're heroes, so they will eventually overcome it. They will, recheck their priorities and figure out, I'm not helping anybody here, crying my eyes out at the Fortress of Solitude. I got to man up, and that's what we want our characters to do. And as far as quitting, Superman's never going to quit being Superman. He just is Superman. Batman's never going to quit being Batman. That's never going to happen. It bugged me in the last Nolan Batman movie where Alfred quits. I mean, Alfred would never quit. I mean, Alfred's not going to quit. He's made a vow. He's made an oath to himself and to the dead Waynes that he's going to look after Bruce till the day he dies. So yeah, but there can be rifts and problems and whatever. But some characters lend themselves more to emotional ups and downs. Peter Parker being one of them. Um, he's he's a guy who has quit being Spider-Man. I think on numerous occasions they've gone back to that well a few times. But you know, there's more of an emotional ups and downs with Peter, as far as particularly in the early years when he was a teenager. He's still going through puberty, he's going through adolescence, and he's beset with all of these problems, both as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and he's just not up to it yet emotionally. And Peter Parker to me is one of those characters, unlike Superman, Batman, unlike Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. Um, Peter Parker is a character who, when he's being written well, should be written that he is always evolving. He's always, to some extent, growing up. He's always, to some extent, becoming a man. And I think really, and you never want to have him arriving to the point where he's a man in full. He's working on it. He's a work in progress. And I think that's what makes Peter Parker endearing. That's one of the reasons we can all relate to him. As both a superhero and a normal Joe citizen, which he is when he takes that Spider-Man costume off. But you don't want to go too far with this stuff. I remember, Stan Lee and John Buscema's Silver Surfer run. They kind of took Kirby's Silver Surfer, who was like a total alien badass. Yeah, he had a heart and had sort of a childlike charm to him, but he was a badass in the end. But they turned him into this character who was constantly feeling sorry for himself, just the self-pity and the self-loathing and regret. It just became too much. I mean, the character was, I just want to see Silver Surfer, kicking ass. And I thought trapping him on Earth was a dumb idea, when I was a kid. I want to see Silver Surfer out there battling, cosmic menaces, trying to figure out where his place is in this world now that he is freed from Galactus. And I thought his origin took a lot of that mystery away from the character. But so you can go too far with this stuff. You can go full emotional and just ruin a character. I always thought Captain America when I was a kid was a little too weepy the way they portrayed him, always grieving over Bucky. It's like, I understand grief, and grief is a process, but every chance Captain America, it's like, it seemed like every time he was alone, he just spent his time grieving over Bucky instead of catching up on his mail or watching TV. It's just like, well, I'm all alone now. Time to grieve again. Put my fist to my head and look out through the rain streak window into the night, thinking about Bucky. Poor Bucky. Kids are cruel. Switistan is here, and he says, I used to wrestle professionally. That's cool. On an independent level, and what'd you do? Just get out of the mall and start wrestling people? No, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. Anyway, there were numerous indie wrestlers and TV wrestlers, boy, this gets dark, who were rumored or known to be pedophiles. Just wondering if it's the same in comics. Were there creeps among the industry? Yeah, I think there's creeps in every industry, but some industries attract more than others. There were some strangeos. Well, continue to be strangeos in the comic book business. In fact, they seem to be welcoming them in. It's like, put a sign on the front door at DC and Marvel. Hey, get your freak on here. But yeah, there were some ne'er-do-wells in that area. I'm not going to name names. I did a lot of expurgating of this question because he was naming names, all of which all of which have been made public, of comic book creators who were less than discriminate in their love lives. If I'm going to say that, and I'm not applying love life to pedophiles. That's not. That's a, you know, pedophiles to me are subhuman trash that should be eliminated from society by one way or another. They should not be allowed out to see the light of day to prey on children. Let me make that absolutely perfectly clear. Um, Back in my old neighborhood, we had a guy who, you know, was what they call now, what was it, minor attracted person? You know, he's a perv. He was a creep, and he went after our paper boy, uh, who managed to escape from him. And some of the neighborhood dads went around with ball bats, and that was the end of that. So, but we don't do that anymore, unfortunately. So, you know, we're left with this really weird place in history, which I'm hoping signs are that things are reversing, where they're trying to normalize this kind of behavior. And no, no, do not, this is not normal. These people are not normal, and they are not rehabilitatable. Science shows us that, history shows us that people with this particular bent are not going to change. They're not going to change for whatever reason, that they are made the way they are made with the desires that they have. Those desires don't go away, and there's really nothing that can be done. And things have been done, you know, from chemical castration to actual castration in some countries, and it doesn't stop it, because I don't think it's connected to love or sex or anything else. I think it's connected to a psychotic need to control, and you know, just, yeah, it's just, you know, yeah, I thought you were going to listen to a fun little podcast about comic books, but this one dark, didn't it? But, you know, these are things, this is real. This is real stuff. And now, as far as the comic industry goes, yeah, I mean, I had an editor once who used to make a lot of trips to Thailand by himself. So he kind of knew what that was about. And another editor who pretty much came out to me, I mean, basically trying to recruit me, you know, sort of asking me questions and telling me stuff to see how I responded to his attraction to children. And this was a guy editing comic books, supposedly for children. But like I said, there's creeps everywhere. There's pervs everywhere in every kind of business. I mean, years ago when they went after the Catholic Church for the pedophile priests, yeah, terrible. And what the church did was awful, trying to hide them and move them around, not informing the public, not punishing these guys. But they singled out the Catholic Church when, you know, there's lots of organizations that are filled with child abusers. The public school system, for one. I remember hearing a report on NPR a number of years ago. NPR, not some right-wing crazy bomb-throwing site, but NPR did an extensive report on the New York City public schools rubber rooms. The rubber rooms were for teachers who couldn't be around kids anymore. And because it was nearly impossible to fire a public school teacher under the New York State system, and would cost a fortune in legal fees to the state, it was actually cheaper to just sort of house them. And they would report to this place where there were no children. It was called the Rubber Room. And there were various ones across the city, and they would just report there and just sort of sit there during school hours, collect their paycheck, get their benefits, their vacations, and all the rest of it, all the benefits of being a teacher without actually having to teach or be around children. And at the time, NPR reported there were over 600 of these people just in the New York City public school system that were sitting in rubber rooms all day, taking up taxpayer dollars, taking up space and time. And the NPR reporter said the most astonishing thing to him about these people in these rubber rooms was, because he visited them and he spent like a day or two in a couple of them, he says they don't do anything. They read the newspaper, they smoke cigarettes, they drink coffee, and you know, stare out the window. This is before cell phones, smartphones became a big thing. He said, you know, he expected, since they have all this time on their hand every day, they might, you know, be writing a novel or working on their resume or perhaps studying something, but no, they were just wastes of oxygen. So I think you know where I stand on all this stuff. And well, let's get back to more fun stuff. Hopefully, the next question will be fun. Ryan Howard. In recent episodes, you've talked a lot about the Way of the Rat movie that failed to materialize at DreamWorks. Hearing about this movie got the wheels turning in my head, and I wanted to run a theory by you. DreamWorks canned Way of the Rat in 2003. 1 year later, they began working on an animated feature called Kung Fu Panda that was also inspired by wuxia movies with an unlikely hero protagonist. My theory is they killed Way of the Rat, cannibalized the idea, and turned it into one of their most successful animated franchises. I've heard this is not an uncommon practice among studios when they option comic book properties. ABC turned Bill Williams' Fables into Once Upon a Time. This springs readily to mind. Do you think DreamWorks cut you and CrossGen out of the action by turning Way of the Rat into an animated martial arts comedy film starring anthropomorphic animals? Has something like this ever happened to you before? Way of the Rat, for those of you who aren't paying attention or didn't know at the time, was a series that ran 24 issues at CrossGen, and it was very much a period martial arts fantasy. And it did feature a talking animal. Popo the monkey was a sort of a mystical figure, a reincarnated Buddhist monk who accompanies Boone, the lead character in Way of the Rat, in all of his adventures. And it was almost made into a movie, very, very close to being made into a movie. We had a fantastic screenplay by an Academy Award-winning screenwriter, and it went to DreamWorks, and two of the guys liked it, and the third guy, Steven Spielberg, refused to even read the screenplay, and he would not sign off on it, and thus it never got made. So we got real close to going into production. They were scouting locations. They were doing all that, starting pre-production stuff, and it all fell apart in the end. Could they have stolen it? Yeah, sure. Why not? They do this all the time. They steal ideas from people all the time. They're bandits. They're creeps. They're robbers. They're not nice people out there in Hollywood. Can't trust them. Don't turn your back on them. If you have them over for dinner, or count the silverware after they leave. Don't let your children spend the weekend with them, obviously. But has this ever happened to me before? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just typical stuff. This is what goes on out there. And they just see something and they make it theirs. I have two specific examples. The movie Waterworld bears a lot of similarities, from plot structure to character development, all the rest of it, to my first miniseries of Winterworld that I did with Jorge Zafino. And I did that. Waterworld comes out a few years after the appearance of Winterworld. And it's pretty obvious that whoever wrote Winterworld, or whoever wrote Waterworld or produced Waterworld had read my comic, because the similarities in the plot, they just took the plot line of my first Winterworld miniseries and set it on water instead of setting it in the snow. But it's the same story, exactly. I mean, there's no arguing about it. Now, should I have sued and all the rest of it? Yeah, maybe. Could have made some noise for myself, but that would have been about it. My chances of winning anything in Hollywood, being just an outside guy, just a comic book writing guy, would have just too much aggravation to go through. Another example is the movie Signs, the M. Night Shyamalan movie about a alien invasion. There's an element in it, the quote unquote surprise, shock, Twilight Zone, M. Night Shyamalan ending to the movie, is the same as the reveal in a miniseries I wrote a few years before Signs was released. It's a series called Invasion 55, which has an aliens invading a desert town in New Mexico. And it turns out, I'm going to spoil both of these things for you if you've never seen Signs or never read Invasion 55, but it turns out that the water, just regular H2O, is toxic to these aliens. M. Night Shyamalan, famously a huge comic book fan, there's no freaking way in hell he didn't read or was aware of Invasion 55. There's just no way that happened. It's not a coincidence. And I will say in defense of Invasion 55 that as much as I like Signs, Invasion 55 makes a whole lot more sense because the aliens land only in New Mexico during a drought. So they land on one place on Earth they know they're not going to run into any water. In Shyamalan's movie, they land all over the planet. Well, it's always raining somewhere on this frickin' planet. It's always raining. I mean, it's laughable. They invade London, and it's never going to rain. You know, they're over New Delhi. Yeah, it doesn't seem to rain while they're there. So Shyamalan's thing, when you examine it, makes absolutely no sense. Why would it be a global invasion? Why wouldn't they invade Saudi Arabia, Dubai, land in the Gobi Desert, land in the Sahara, land in New Mexico, as I suggested, places where they weren't going to be exposed to water before they tried to dominate the planet, or whatever the hell it is they were going to do. Shyamalan really never makes it clear why they even showed up on Earth in such numbers. But anyway, so yeah, and again, could I have sued? Could I have made a case? This one would have been harder to make because it's only one element of my story. Often they want like a number of elements. Like here are 29 points where these two stories are similar, and I only had 1 point. Other than the fact that they were both invasion from space stories, I really only had the 1 point. So, what's it gonna do in a small town? Tim Gilpin is here with, I have a copy of Wizard Nightwing 1/2 Special Edition. How was creating the issue for you, Scott McDaniel, and the rest of the Nightwing team? Did Wizard's involvement in the 1/2 format make the process different from regular monthly issues? I enjoyed the one-shot story and Scott's funny sketchbook pages. Yeah, it was a Wizard 1/2 of Nightwing 1/2. And Wizard had this gimmick back when Wizard was, a big thing. They were doing these special edition comics that you could, if I remember, you could mail away for it. And you'd get the comic and you'd get some sort of certificate of authenticity or whatever. So to make this instant collectible. And a lot of Marvel and DC and maybe Dark Horse, I don't really remember, did a bunch of these 1/2 issues, and they could fit anywhere in continuity. Now with Nightwing, because our continuity was so tight, we basically assigned this story a place in the continuity, but because it's a one-off story and could fit anywhere, that was the idea. You just make this one-off standalone story, and really that was the job, and it was simple. Scott and I had done a number of these, and then we talked to Scott Peterson, our editor, about okay, we're going to do this, and here's where we'll fit in continuity when eventually it's collected with the rest of Nightwing's run, because as a comic book, it was going to remain a collectible. It's going to be a one-of-a-kind item, but we were going to collect it later. So really, Wizard didn't have any say in how we did it. I mean, DC was entirely responsible for packaging it for Wizard. As far as I know, they handled printing and everything. I really don't know how that end of it worked. But to us, it was just another standalone issue or inventory issue or whatever, and that's how we approached it. Although, we didn't phone it in at all. We wanted to tell a really cool story. Because we were going to be reaching potentially a brand new audience. Hopefully it would reach people that hadn't read Nightwing before. They were simply buying it, getting it because it was a collectible, and now this would be their first exposure. So we really worked hard to make it a fun, entertaining story. Hopefully they would start buying Nightwing on a regular basis. I don't know if it helped or not, but there we go. Dick Kerbo. I came across this pinup with your buddy Nolan inking the great Dick Sprang. Do you know the story behind the dynamic duo Bad Artist collaboration? Did you ever meet Sprang? If so, how was it? Lastly, what are some of your favorite Dick Sprang comics? Boy, this was cool. Um, Dick Sprang do a Bane pinup for, I think, one of the annuals or some Secret Origins thing. I can't remember where this originally appeared, and Graham got to ink it. Now, again, our editor was Scott Peterson, so he would put together these cool little things for all of us to do, and he knew what a huge Batman fan Graham was. Graham's got a pretty extensive, pretty impressive collection of Golden Age Batman comics, and he knew that of all the people in the DC stable, Graham would be the one that would be, most eager, most grateful for an opportunity to ink the great Dick Sprang. And it's a really great piece. I mean, Mr. Sprang never lost it. He was doing some terrific work. He's doing a lot of stuff for the Warner Brothers stores, a lot of lithos and prints and things like that. And this is just a knockout piece. I just love it as a co-creator of Bane to see, one of the great iconic Batman artists taking a swing at, Graham and my boy here. I just know Graham was just thrilled to death. I think Graham ended up with the original for this. I'm not sure. I seem to remember him showing it off to me during a Zoom call once. And that's how it came together. As far as my favorite Dick Sprang story, I'm not going to bore everybody because I've gone over it over and over again. The Thousand Strange Costumes of the Batman. My favorite Batman story of all time. Dick Sprang drew it. I think Dick Sprang drew it. There's certain drawn in Dick Sprang style, but an absolute favorite story of mine of Batman and Robin. It's a great Robin story as well. And a huge inspiration for me, and I've basically used it to inspire three different comic book stories. It was a big inspiration to me on the second Robin miniseries, and then I retold it as a Bartman story in Simpsons, and then I had some fun retelling it as a Mermaid Man story in SpongeBob comics. So there you go. Dick Sprang, man, what an awesome guy. And no, I never met him. Okay, Tex Harmon, g'day, Chuck. I assume we're hearing from down under. Been a minute. Just curious on how the working process with DC was like when you were working on it says Babe Conquest. I think he means Bane Conquest, although Babe Conquest would be interesting. Was editorial a bit in the way, or was it free reign? Yeah, it's kind of different kind of thing. Bane Conquest came about. I didn't sign the non-disclosure agreement. It came out as part of the settlement when Graham and I we were promised a whole lot when Dark Knight Rises was in pre-production. That we were going to be quote unquote taken care of by DC and Warner's, and it turned out that they fell somewhat short of the mark, way short of what they promised and our expectations. And so, there were lawyers involved, and we went to the mattresses and back and forth, this and that. We came to a settlement, and part of the settlement was this is weird, isn't it? Listen to this. They were going to give us more money for the movie. Give us more money of the $1.5 billion that the movie made. They're going to give us some chump change, but on their books they couldn't justify it as just giving it to us. So we had to do some work for DC in order to justify this payment. And this is Hollywood accounting 101. So they said, what would you like to do? So basically we were given free reign to do whatever we want, carte blanche. And we said we want to do, we did a little Donald Trump negotiating here. We said we want to do a 24 issue series, 2 years of a Bane solo comic. And of course, they came back and said, well, we're never going to give you 24 issues. How about 12, which is what we wanted? We wanted a maxi series. We wanted to tell one big story. We already knew what story we wanted to tell. We didn't share this with them, but we knew what we wanted to do. So they gave us 12 issues, this big maxi story, this big epic solo Bane adventure. And with the understanding that it was going to, we didn't have to pay attention to continuity. We were unconstrained by any of DC's rules, and except for the standard editorial duties of proofreading and trafficking the art and everything else, we were to be left alone on this project. And I think the wiser heads at DC said, we can trust these guys. They're not going to go nuts. They're not going to, do anything that we'd be embarrassed by. They're going to do good work, and they just want a, chance to strut their stuff with the character they co-created. And so we were left alone. Now, the funny thing is, they paid us the money, the royalties out of the movie, but then they also paid us to do the book. And when they asked us for our rates, we thought, okay, this is a golden opportunity because we ain't never coming back here again. We've already burned our bridges. We jacked our rates up as high as the market would bear for 12 issues of Bane. And in the end, we created something. We had a lot of fun working on it. And in the end, I think we created a hell of a story. And we were hoping that it would be so successful that we would continue. And we had plans for things beyond Bane Conquest. Actually, we had plans, we had talked over that there would be a series of 3 12-issue maxi series. And in the end of the final one, Bane would basically be the king of the DC Universe underworld. He would either have destroyed every other criminal organization or brought them under his thumb. He would be the supervillain equivalent of Genghis Khan. That he would have this global criminal empire. He would be the big cheese. And but we never got to do that. But in our minds, we had big plans. So, and all in all, it turned out okay, I guess. We still think, as Graham said at the time, if Paramount made Dark Knight Rises, we would have been millionaires. But that's the way it goes in the big city. Okay. Hey, I got this movie coming out. Well, I don't have it coming out. MGM and Amazon have it coming out, but I wrote the novel that it was based on. And Sylvester Stallone wrote the screenplay, and Jason Statham plays the lead hero, Levon Cade. It's based on my novel, Levon's Trade, and it's called A Working Man, and it comes out very soon, a couple of weeks from you hearing my dulcet tones here. And in theaters everywhere, wide release, Jason Statham movie. So getting a lot of buzz. Looks like it's going to do pretty good. I've got fingers and toes crossed. But it is based on a series of novels. I wrote 12 Levon Cade novels. I will be getting back to the series and writing a few more. But they are available on Amazon. Apparently you can order them at Walmart too. If you're not an Amazon fan, Walmart carries all of my Levon books online, if not in the store. I'd love to see them in the store. I'd love to walk into a Walmart and see my novels there along with all the others. Maybe crowding out some of that James Patterson action with my stuff. But I don't know that's ever going to be. Actually, my real dream, if it's just between you and I, don't tell anybody. My real dream is to go into Walgreens, the drugstore, and see my paperback there. Because if you're on the rack at Walgreens, that means you are selling Mondo huge numbers. If Walgreens deigns to let you stick your novel on one of their little wire racks. But anyway, all of that said, I made my pitch. Get you to try to spend some money. And if you want to reach me, brunobookstore@gmail.com, brunobookstore@gmail.com. If you have an awesome question, like all the questions were this week, just terrific questions that got me to reveal way too much information. But, what the hell? I don't care anymore. Go to brunobookstore@gmail.com and I will see your questions and remarks and suggestions and photographs and all kinds of crazy stuff you folks send me. And that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, subscribing, all the other wonderful things you do. Keep the questions coming. I love answering them. This is a lot of fun for me. And that's all it is fun, because I don't monetize this page anymore, because I don't feel like I have to annoy you people, my loyal public, my good friends, with a bunch of stupid ads. Boy, there are a bunch of stupid ads on YouTube, aren't there? But I'm not going to annoy you with that. You can just watch me unadorned by commercial interruption, because I care so much. And because I was making so little anyway, didn't matter. So, not to be too mercenary. Anyway, that's it. That's it. Go away now.